Hey, so when you're playing Schedule 1, you're wanting to know how do you make money in this game. I'm going to give you a couple of tips that I honestly think would have helped me when I was first playing Schedule 1. First thing is, alright, a lot of people, they get to playing this game when they start out. Alright, there's a couple of things you need to know. One, alright, you can pick up trash for money, right? You can pick up stuff, go look for these little green trash containers. Okay? This makes some money. However, I'd argue there's a faster way to make money. In fact, even faster than that is what you do. You go behind somebody, and if you crouch, you get an option called, get this, pickpocket. And you can hit E, and then it's just a spacebar. So here, pop, and then we get the money. And then you can do it again. Oh, see, like that? And if you miss, then you gotta fight them. In this case, we can pick them, knock them out. And then once you knock them out, you just, ditch. But you could also sell somebody something and then pocket them and take the profits and then run. So there's more than one way to play it, right? The next thing is obviously when you start out, you're going to want to grab the bungalow. But before you get the bungalow, when you're starting out in the game, there's kind of a network of things that you have to understand. One being that you got to get a dealer. To get a dealer, you got to build relationships. And how do you build relationships? Well, easy answer, go to contacts. And here, this is how you determine the relationships of all the individuals in a certain area. The idea is to make them happy, preferably ones that are near dealers, because then you can buy the dealer and then have basically all your product go to the dealer, and the dealer will then sell the product. And therefore, you will make money a lot more quickly and a lot more passively without having near as much energy focused on the logistics of things. Obviously, when you're starting out, you're going to want to make sure you pay your stashes. Otherwise, well, obviously, you'll run into all sorts of problems. But more or less, once you get to where you've got some capital and cash flow coming through, really about the only thing that you I guess what I would say when you start out, right? You're going to go down to the Chinese restaurant, and you're going to pick up behind here for about $800. You'll pick up this room here. If you want to know what I did, I basically just set up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 total grow tents, and then 3 total of these. Get yourself a mixing station, and then you'll want a packing station. And then you'll just run mixing soil on these and fertilizer to get the most amount of yield. You don't really need to worry about the trash. I mean, yeah, I could turn around and pick all this stuff up and sell it if I wanted to, but to be honest with you, I really don't waste the time. You also want to make sure you pick up a lot of baggies. You don't really want to worry about so much, so like in here, for example, you can get the individual product that you're producing. Preferably, one of the things that you can do is, like you can see that there's blue, which is standard. There's purple, which is premium. If you want to go past premium, you have to get something called a drying rack, which if you're wondering how do we go acquire a drying rack, well, there's one way of doing it, which is that when you first start out, right, you're going to go over here and you're going to go to any place that is basically a hardware store. When you're there, you're going to go in here and you're going to basically pick up your packing station, your electric plant trimmers, you're going to grab the pot sprinklers. Don't bother with the soil pourers. Those are really kind of a waste of time. Just get the extra long, get the water can if you need to, and get your fertilizer. And then what you'll do is you'll basically build up a little supply of cash that way, until eventually you have enough cash that you can then buy up the next spot, which is in the motel. So when you've got yourself enough income and enough product, you'll basically go over here and pick up Benji. Benji's like your go-to guy for any product that you turn around and make. You'll make your product and sell it to him. Now you can see I've got blue and purple versions, and it all depends on what kind of component you're trying to sell to. And if you're wondering how do you know what to produce and how to sell it and vice versa, you go to products, and in here, anytime you make a combination, you can then turn around and you can actually list it. So in here, you can see what the addictiveness scale is, where it's at, and what the asking price is. So like here, I know that, I get at least $101 per unit, and it's incredibly addictive. So it's a really good product. Now like this, being that it's 42% and it's only $57, I'm obviously not making near as much on the lower quality units. Now you got to remember that when you're starting out, you don't really start building on say like you'll start out with weed, but you'll slowly but surely grow your way into eventually meth and then eventually cocaine. And the higher tier versions of the drugs, and the more receptive they are to them. That is to say that if you go into like a shop like this, for example, okay, you have a lot of different combinations in here, but typically what I would like to do on any given day is try to get adus, because they increase the amount of addiction, plus they're thought-provoking. You can also use iodine, or if you want to get a little crazy, use flu medicine or donuts, because what you're ultimately trying to do is fit people's preferences, and more or less, depending on what their preferences are, some will pay more depending on what preference they have. So if you ever want to know what that is, just go up to them, offer a deal. It'll tell you over here on the right-hand tab what their favorite effects are and what their standards are. And the idea here is to obviously try and match whatever your product is to what their preferences are, and then mass produce as much of that as you possibly can. When you hear that little alarm, that's usually the indication that it is almost curfew. When it goes full blare, you don't want to be walking around, because otherwise you will wind up getting booked, so don't do that. Basic bottom line is you always want to open the briefcases and make sure you've got your little workers paid. Now, of course, if you're wondering, how do I get a worker? What do I do? How do I do that? Okay, easy button. Basically, you just go run over here. And again, well, like right now, curfew isn't over, so they're not going to flip a table on me just yet. But now, so you can hear the alarm, so you know that they're coming up. But the main gist here is that, at least to Schedule 1, as far as I'm concerned, is you'll eventually get to where you will have access to this building here. This does take a little bit of time, but once you actually acquire it, you'll just go in here and you'll talk to this guy. And this is where you get access to your acid, phosphorus. You need these two components to make meth. Now your drying rack is where you get your higher quality version of the marijuana, which is obviously how you get higher standards from there. And eventually you can get something called a cauldron. So like, for example, he does everything in cash, so he does not do in bank, which is a little nice. And then you can also get a brick press. Now, if you're wondering what, whether or not how many of these do you actually need, vice versa, what have you. In this case, we'll just get one and one, and I'll just show you what I'm talking about. But you obviously want to try and get the higher quality mixing station if you can, because this makes it automatic. Same thing for the packing station. I mean, once you get to automatic, it makes it a lot easier. Now, basically, once you have acquired that, and also you were wondering about the workers, right? So yeah, you've got that guy. If you go up here, obviously this is where you buy weapons and such, but if you're wanting workers, and in particular, this is where you go to get workers. And so here you can ask for a botanist if you're wanting somebody to harvest plants, a handler if you want to move stuff from one storage to the next, or a chemist if you want somebody to be making stuff out of meth, and what have you. And a cleaner is kind of the worst, maybe the most pointless of the bunch. I don't really see any point in having, but some people do. Now, obviously, like here, you can see if you do get under arrest, they're not going to like immediately try to tase you, but they'll get close. You let them. The idea is not to let them get close, and just run like a crazy son of a gun, so you don't have to deal with it. But more or less, once you've done that, and also like here, that you can see they're kind of like in the general direction. Obviously, you don't want to like bother them right away. The next dealer you can pick up, by the way, is this guy here, Molly. And again, same principles of everything else. You just want to make sure that you stock them from time to time, because otherwise what will happen is you'll run out of, well, basically your dealers won't have anything to sell, which is obviously not a good thing. When you get the bungalow, though, the first thing that you'll notice is that you do get something called a loading bay. And this is handy when you're wanting to buy, say, like, so if we go over here and you go to deliveries, eventually the more rep you build with a individual seller, so like versus say like all of the other ones, like you'll start off with Albert and eventually you can actually order and ship directly from them. And the same thing for Shirley if you're wanting to do pseudo, and vice versa. But again, it's all about just basically building up from there. But if you want to see, this is kind of the method I've got one little person, and then basically I have them run off of one storage rack, and then I just basically have them run the seeds, and they run rinse repeat. And that's about all there is to it, really. I mean, there's nothing too crazy to it. And I run 2 chemistry stations and a single lab oven, 1 packaging station, and then I usually like to run as much as I possibly can, as far as just product and stuff. And it's in general. I mean, it's really about all there is to it. Now, like in this case, we don't have a ton of space for like a cauldron and all this other stuff, right? So what I ended up doing is obviously the more money you acquire and such, you can eventually build up to a point where you can then acquire more locations. Now, if you're wondering, where do you go to acquire new locations? Okay, there's a place over here in the later part of the town, and I'll show you where that's at. And again, this is kind of, how do you say, this amounts to about 2 or 3 hours of time of like just figuring out how this works. But again, we're not gonna sweat this too much. We'll go ahead and sleep just so we don't have to deal with. Maybe. Okay. All right. Yeah. So obviously, we'll just go ahead and sleep. We don't have to deal with the malarkey that is basically everyday police enforcing their curfews. Obviously, yes, if you want to make deals, you can go to messages and then individually talk to your people, or you can go and grab directly from your distributors. But anyway, so the main thing here is eventually you do get another dealer. His name's Brad. You get him over here in this location. So this is where your third dealer will be. And again, Brad is, another dealer. Obviously, you try to give them as much product as you can so that you can get as much money flowing as you can. But eventually what you do is you'll get access to the barn. And again, like earlier, you know how like you, so like for example, if you go up to an ATM, right? If you need to pull cash from your bank card or vice versa, or deposit, you'll notice that there is in fact a weekly deposit of only $10,000. When you are running into this cap, there is a way around it, and it's in the form of money laundering. Wondering how do you acquire money laundering businesses? One of them happens to be a post office you can buy for 10K. And again, that requires you having enough money in ditch capital, which more or less means you got to have it in your bank card. So you can go over here and go to raise real estate, and this is where you'll pick up properties, which you can buy the dock, you can buy the barn, or if you buy a business, this is where you run money laundering. First place will be the laundromat that you'll more than likely acquire. It's like somewhere over, in this general area, but we're going to go straight to the barn here, and I'll just show you what that's all about. Again, you just go to the Hank's hardware over here. And again, it's not terribly tricky by any stretch of the imagination, but you just run all the way over here. And then this is where pretty much you can run a lot larger of an operation and produce a lot more. And as you can tell, you basically just build and build and build from there. As you can tell, I run as many beds as I can up here though, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'll just assign those to workers. And then from there we'll just build up. If you're wondering how, you just type 9, and then from here you would just click on the worker and assign it to the bed and vice versa. But main thing here is this cauldron. So we're gonna go ahead and put this cauldron here. We'll put a brick press here. Now, if you're wondering how this works, basically you can put product into that, and then you can put them in a brick. In here, you can put coca leaves and a gasoline, and you get yourself a whole different product, right? So there's a lot of different ways to tackle it, at least in this game. But in this particular case, like if, for example, I want to acquire, say, a newer approach to say the I don't know, like if I want coca seeds, for example, we'll run over and acquire some stuff here real quick. We got about 5K, so we should have enough to hopefully be able to get that achieved, and we can run like the third still type of method here. But if you go over to this guy, one thing that's nice about this guy here is that you can acquire some other stuff that you may or may not need, like storage and fertilizer. I don't really bother with speed grow or PGR, but you could if you wanted to. Generally speaking, you really don't need to once you get past a certain point. Of course, if you ever wanted a car or anything like that, you just go over to the... obviously, when you start out with the RV, you'll be like over in this area when you start out, but yeah, the Highland Auto is where you buy your vehicles and such. And that's easier if you're wanting to run large amounts of product from point A to point B. But I'll go ahead and show you where the laundromat is. It's just over here. And this is one of the other locations where if, for example, you've got that 10K limit, you can run 2K in the laundromat or 4K in the post office. So like here, I can go ahead and launder, and it'll go ahead and launder the 2K I've got in my pocket and convert that into bank card debt I can then use for more legitimate purchases, say of businesses or vice versa. So that's really about all you need to know as far as all the nitpicks within the game's facets of Schedule 1. I mean, I will point out that if you are wanting to produce like a substantial amount of cash in a very short period of time, I think honestly pickpocketing is probably the easiest way to do it. just for the simplicity of that. You do have an option, though, that if you are more of a gambler, you can go to the casino. And if you're wondering where the casino is, all you got to do is just run down all the way over here. So if you know where the motel is, right? This is an motel. You'll run over here, and you'll run down all the way over here where the where the parking garage is, and you'll come out and across over here on the left-hand corner, and you'll have the casino. And this only opens at around 4 o'clock at night, but in here you can run the slots, you can play blackjack, or you can even run, I think it's like horse wheel, something, I don't know, I can't remember. I just know it's like a double or nothing type game. So more or less, you know, like you got a couple of different ways. This is where the police station is, by the way, so you don't want to generally get your head poked in there too often. But of course, the barbershop's right there. You've got like a couple of other places in and around here that you can kind of visit time to time. Like obviously the tattoo shop's just down the road here. You got the pawn shop right there. Like here, if you ever run into this, you just hit space. You get through the, you know, obviously unless you're trying to hide something or you've got something in your pockets, you know, generally that's the only other time you may not speed that up. But yeah, I mean, otherwise that's pretty much the gist as far as Schedule 1 is concerned. I will point out though that obviously, like in our case, we're wanting to run the new expansion. So in here, what we'll do is we'll actually, so like here you can run like different varieties. So for example, I don't have any additives at the moment, so could choose not to. It's kind of up to me at this point whether I want to or not. But one thing you always want to make sure is you always got something running. It's kind of an iffy thing at best, but I mean that's what it is. In this particular instance, though, we're wanting to grab access to more product, and importantly, we're wanting to grab like higher end products. So to be able to do that, we're going to need to run back either to one of two places. So we're going to start off by, we're going to like just try and dodge this if we can, and just run over and across. If you're wondering where the original seller, like where you go when you start out, it's just over here, behind that hardware store that I'd shown you earlier, Dan's Hardware. You just go from the back alley over here, and it'll be right under the right. That's where Albert's at. Of course, if you ever have to individually talk to people, you can always, talk to them and make connections. And the idea behind the baggie is just so that you don't have to can them and then give a can away, because you really don't want to waste. Only time you really ever need a can, and you have too much product. But other than that, right? So if you ever want to keep track of things, in particular, any particular place you're at, you can always go to the map. It'll tell you where potential customers are, and then it'll also give you an idea of where like other stuff is on the map if you're struggling to figure out where things are for any reason. But yeah, I mean, I would say really about all of what I've told you is really about all you need to know as far as Schedule 1's concerned. So if you have any other questions, just feel free to ask in the comment section below. But thanks for watching.